Well, time now for, of course, a continuation of our conversation with a man with an impressive football and education career. Dr. Bernard Shoes Lushozi began, of course, his professional football career with Moroka Swallows back in 1984, and he joins us now to continue that conversation. And you were just making reference to, you know, the educational background, Dr. Lushozi, how important it is to have that support structure. And you mentioned something quite important, you know, even off air, that I think it's important for our viewers to hear, that, you know, in as much as obviously you went through your phase of in denial, frustration, but you came to realize that even with the plans that you had for your life, as intelligent as they were, God had a different plan for your life.
That's true. Yes. It's true that, you know, on discovering that I was blind, you know, I had to make sense of what was happening in my life. And as a result, like, you know, the only sense I made, it had to be that, you know, I thought I knew my destiny. And when God has a different thing. But, you know, being me, I had to make a quick decision, you know, to say, whether do I drop everything down and say, no, well, life is finished with me. But now, as I have explained to you, that I'm advocating for people who are facing disabilities, that, you know, disability, it's a state of functioning. It's not a disease. You know, so now my state of functioning has altered, it has changed. You know, instead of reading, for example, now I have to teach myself to pray because life must continue.
And how does it fit into the school that you are now involved with as the principal? Because one of the main reasons we wanted to talk to you, Doctor, is in your thesis that you talk about. I've got a very small abstract. I can't read all of it as well, but there's a lack of consistent standard of service delivery through formalized policies. So what are you aiming to achieve, A, with the thesis, with your doctorate, with your degree, and with the school that you're involved in? What are you wanting government to do? Where does it need to change? What would you have done?
Yeah, well, I will talk about this in terms of my findings. When I used instructional approaches because I practically discovered in my school that our teachers are struggling with the teaching methods and strategies to reach out to this population of learners. And I had to make a research on the teaching methods, and I've realized that there's a big problem. But the results reveals that the problem is not about the teachers themselves per se. It is multifaceted. Firstly, the special schools are called special. And in most cases, when teachers who works in special schools, they do not have a relevant training to teach learners who are facing intellectual disabilities. For example, the theory in teaching teach us that for you to teach a learner, you must know that this learner, she's Tumelo, she comes from Zola, and her cognitive functioning is at this level. You must know a learner. So if a learner is afflicted with autism spectrum, it means you must know Tumelo with her autism spectrum. So teachers are expected to teach a learner maths and science without knowing the learning style of a learner who is afflicted with cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, hydrocephalus, alcoholic syndrome, all those, you know, disabilities. You need to know as to the learning styles, how these learners are learned. So now teachers are just thrown in there. They do whatever they have in there. Under the circumstances, I have to tell you this, that teachers are resilient and they're doing their best with what they have. But now, this points to the training of the teachers. For example, Tumelo, if I may say to you, they call us special education, special schools. You know, if you have a toothache, you go to see, what do they call the doctors for?
A dentist.
A dentist. Yeah. But because they specialize, that's why you don't go to a gynecologist.
Right.
So if you have to teach a learner who's facing a Down syndrome, you have to know what is Down syndrome and how do people who are afflicted with Down syndrome learn, how do their learning styles. And yes, but now that is why teachers get frustrated, because they use the same strategies for the mainstream to teach.
And that's what we're going to talk about as well, because we've identified, or you've identified, so many problems. And I think when we come back in a couple of minutes, I want to try and get to some solutions on this, because training seems to be a problem. The understanding of how to train the teachers to teach the kids seems to be the problem. So I'm glad we've identified that. And we're going to unpack that, Doctor. We're going to try and find out what your suggestions and solutions are when we come back. By the way, please feel free to tweet us as well at eNCA if you have a message for, let's make sure I got this right, Dr. Bernard Lushozi. You know, doctor, PhD, highly specialized, and of course you'll know him as Shoes from his football playing days. You want to tweet us a comment, a question, please do that. We'll keep an eye on our phones at eNCA. We're back with the doctor in a moment.
Yeah, but in the meantime, of course.